A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Well, as stated in the introduction, in March, the Australian Law Reform Commission released a set of recommendations that would affect Christian schools so significantly that they would almost cease to look like Christian schools. Christian advocates see the recommendations as an appalling attack on faith and freedom of belief in Australia. If the government turns those recommendations into law, it means Christian schools would be unable to employ purely Christian teachers and staff who obviously share the same values and beliefs of the school. So today we're hearing from the perspective of Christian schools. Alistair Macpherson is Executive Director of Public Policy and Advocacy with Associated Christian Schools. They've been holding town hall meetings around Australia with an initiative called Faith in the Future. And it's our great pleasure to welcome Alistair Macpherson now. Alistair, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be on your show.
Yeah, Alistair, just for our listeners who are not familiar with the Associated Christian Schools, how many schools do you represent?
Yeah, sure. So we've got 47 schools throughout Queensland. They're all independent schools, but they choose to associate together through Associated Christian Schools for things like advocacy, public policy, as well as professional development, and just to share faith and share life together as school leaders.
Okay, so you're representing Queensland Christian schools. So is this a Queensland government issue or is this a federal government issue?
No, it's a federal government issue. And so on this, we're actually allied together with two other similar organisations, Christian Schools Australia and the Australian Association of Christian Schools. So we've joined together, we've formed a new website and a new community known as My Christian School, where people can demonstrate their support for Christian schools, but also understand the challenges that Christian schools are facing because of what's happening with the ALRC inquiry and the recommendations that have been made to government.
Yeah, and the ALRC, for our listeners, is the Australian Law Reform Commission. So in total, then, that collective you formed there, how many schools are represented?
Yeah, so there's over 300 schools, over 150,000 students around Australia, and they're all schools that, whilst they're independent, they're all very much see themselves as Christian ministry, and so as being a Christian ministry, they consider it important that they're able to hire Christian staff who see that what they're doing is part of their mission and calling in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are going to dig into the Christian perspective. I'm just curious, so have you heard any whispers from, there are other faith-based schools, obviously there's Islamic schools in Australia as well. Are they also bristling at this? Have you heard anything from that sector?
Look, absolutely. In fact, really the entire faith-based education sector is unhappy about changes. In fact, just yesterday I was reading in the Australian that the Catholic churches are even considering their future position should these changes be brought in. We've also had the Islamic schools attending our town halls around Australia and demonstrating their support as well. The reality is we're all concerned about the implications if we're not able to hire people of faith for these roles within faith-based schools.
Yeah, well, it looks like an attempt for the state to get their claws and their tentacles into something that they have no right to touch, which is our faith and schools that people of faith have founded.
Well, that's right. And that's part of the real shocking challenge here is that churches and communities have started these ministries over many years as an extension of their church or their denomination or Christian parent groups, and to see them essentially be stolen away by stealth by these changes is just outrageous, and it's an attack on religious freedom in this country.
Absolutely. So there are concerns that these ALRC recommendations will weaken Christian schools to the point that they will almost be unrecognisable as Christian. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, that's the issue really that we face. if a Christian school only exists really through the services of who are delivering those services, who are doing the work, if those people are not of Christian faith, how can it, as its very essence, still be a Christian school? What we hear continually is that people come to these schools because they want to experience the Christian faith and the Christian love that's offered by staff to students. And if we can't employ based upon that Christian faith and that Christian practice, well, how do we remain authentic to our mission and our values? We would say that we can't.
Yeah, and it is another example of the culture war, isn't it? Because the extreme left wing of politics in the world and in history ends up in a communistic or a heavily socialist state where the state literally controls everything, don't they? They control business, they control media, and they control education. And this is really an example, isn't it? Although it's not at that extreme just yet, but it's an example of the state basically trying to say to people like you and me, you know what? We can do this better than you. So you just step aside and listen to us, and we're going to take over your school. We're going to infiltrate your school to the point that you can't even hire people that you want to hire, and therefore we have our voice in your school, which was, as you said, started by people with faith.
And that's the challenge we're facing. I mean, we ask ourselves, why do we do this? Well, we do it because of our faith. Parents choose our schools because of who our schools are and what our schools teach and believe and practice, and that's being taken away. And it's not appropriate, and it goes against the clear international treaties that Australia signed up to, that Australia has been a part of for so many years, and now we're moving away from those rights of religious freedom and the right of parents to choose to have their children taught in a way that's consistent with their own beliefs and practices.
Yeah. So just for our listeners who aren't familiar with those treaties that we signed, when were they signed and what are those treaties?
Yeah, so really it goes all the way back to just after World War II. We signed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In fact, Australia was one of only a number of countries involved in the drafting of that, which recognised both religious freedom but also recognised the right of parents to choose. And so that's been followed up in various other treaties since, including this International Civil Covenant on political rights. And so, yeah, there's been a number of international treaties that Australia's been a part of, which Australia has said over the years is important, and we want to reflect in our legal in our laws and our processes here in this country.
Yeah, so obviously you guys are trying to lobby the government and engage with the federal government, the sitting federal government. What sort of a response are you getting from them on this issue?
Well, unfortunately, we're not hearing a lot of positivity from the government. The government say, and they have said on various occasions, that faith-based communities should be able to employ people of faith, but then they go on to say that no one should be discriminated against for what they believe. We say that faith is more than just belief; it's also practice. It's how you live out your faith, and our schools and our students will spot hypocrisy from a mile away. And so what we're asking for is not only the right to employ people for what they believe, but also the right to employ people who live in a way that's consistent with what they believe.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the government aren't being incredibly positive with you. Are you getting any traction with the opposition? Are they hearing you and seeing your concerns?
Yeah, we have a lot more positive feedback from the opposition than we're hearing from the government. And so we've been very thankful to have the support of the opposition. The Shadow Attorney General and the Shadow Education Minister has been at most of our town hall events around the country speaking in support of this. We've invited members of the government at every single event. And unfortunately, in all the events we've held, we've only had one member of government attend. and speak. But
and where was that, out of interest? Which part of Australia?
That was
over in Perth.
Yeah, so that's the only time that we've had a member of government attend. But at every other event in every other capital city, no member of government has attended, and that's disappointing given the number of people that have been coming out to show their support for faith-based schools.
Yeah, well, how many people have been coming out on these rallies, and how many rallies have you held across Australia so far? These town hall meetings.
So we've had 5 so far. So we had our first in Brisbane last month. We had over 800 at that event. They're all being held at Christian schools that are part of our various associations. So the first one was in Brisbane, over 800. Then we went to Sydney and had over 700 there. We flew across to Perth, where we had almost 500 attend. Then down in Launceston, where we had over 550 attend there. And then we had our final one just over a week ago, or not our final one, our second last one actually, just over a week ago in Melbourne. And we had over 1,200 people turn up there. So we've got one to go, which is in Adelaide next Wednesday evening.
So that's quite a snub from the Albanese government, isn't it, to not send someone to at least hear your concerns. Were you surprised by that?
Look, very surprised and very disappointed, really, in that we've extended that invitation very broadly, not just to local members, but also ministers, senators across the area in each of those jurisdictions, and had none attend. And it's disappointing because we've sought to really cast these as an opportunity to hear the positive stories that come out of Christian schools. So we've had students, former students, teachers and parents all speak about what's made Christian school different for them and their families. The positive stories of students who have experienced the love and grace of teachers and staff within Christian schools, and just what a difference that's made for them and their self-esteem and sense of worth. And these are the stories that we want our politicians to hear, and to know that Christian schooling is not something to be attacked, but it's something to be supported, because we do make a significant difference.
Well, you also save every state government in Australia a lot of money as well, because they don't have to educate the kids in their own state education system. Every private school, I think, in Australia is a win for any government, for every state government, because you're saving the state government's money because they're not having to educate these kids.
That's right. And in fact, parents are paying to have their children educated at our member schools. So they're actually investing in it because they see it's important. They should have the right to be able to say, if we're investing in it, we want to see our money go towards the employment of people who will teach in a way that's consistent with what we're seeking.
Yeah, and I think you've hit the nail on the head. This is a basic human right, isn't it? We should have the right to believe what we want to believe, as long as we're not hurting anybody or, attacking anyone physically. We should have the right in Australia, shouldn't we, to choose what we believe and to choose how we live, as long as it's within the laws, and also to choose how our kids are educated, as long as it meets certain academic criteria.
And that really goes back to the human rights that we're talking about, that right to believe, the right to practice faith, and the right to choose the school that is educating our children in accordance with our own beliefs.
Welcome back to 2020. This is Andrew McLennan, actually filling in for Neil Johnson today on 2020, and we're talking about a very important issue now. Our federal government, the Albanese government, has received recommendations from the Australian Law Reform Commission that will affect Christian education in Australia. And sadly, the Christian schools are trying to push back against this. They're holding public rallies and town hall meetings to discuss this. And sadly, I think for Australia, for our democracy, for our freedoms, the federal government has not even, except once in Perth, managed to send a representative to attend these meetings and hear the concerns of a bunch of Christian schools that have 150,000 young Australians being educated in them. We want to hear your thoughts on this. How does this make you feel? Are you a Christian parent? Do you have a child in a Christian school? People are calling. If you can't get through straight away, please persevere. Jesus said, knock and the door will be open. Keep knocking as these talk lines become available. But we do have a couple of calls, and I want to go to the first one right now, who is Natalie from Camp Mountain in Queensland. Natalie, welcome.
Hello, yes, thank you, and thank you for bringing up this very important topic. I guess I'm kind of glad I'm first because I've got a really positive story, and I think we need to keep these positive stories. So one of my nearly eldest grandchild is a few now, who was 5 in January and has started school at Warwick Christian College. And look, hats off and all praises to Warwick Christian College. They are doing a fantastic job.
That's a good plug there, the Warwick Christian College. A beautiful little town, Warwick, isn't it? But it gets cold in winter. Cold.
Very cold. We were there on the weekend, yes. Anyway, and look, this little 5-year-old who is a bit prone to anxiety, and she's not been a really easy child to raise because she does worry about everything, etc. But she's in this beautiful school, and she comes home singing God songs, and I've seen her, she's quite bright, and she's written these letters to God to help her with this and help her with that, and she asks Mummy to, help her with writing these letters to God to help her with whatever she's worried about. And that's largely because she has these beautiful Christian teachers, whom she also knows from church, who are just fostering that in her. She has this natural little child faith, which, at 5, if it's established now, it's going to stick, isn't it? And if she's going to be anxious about things, and she already knows because her teachers help her through it, to pray to God and help her to, deal with whatever it is. And she's getting that at school.
Absolutely, absolutely. Can I ask, because no one knows who you are right now, can I ask how old you are?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm 62.
You sound 32. So you're 62. I assume you've worked most of your adult life. You've paid taxes to the federal government all your life. Do you think you should have the right to see your grandkids educated in a school that has the same faith as you?
Oh, totally. And to have that incredible encouragement. Absolutely, totally.
Yes, that should be your right, shouldn't it?
Well, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, so how does it make you feel knowing that the federal government is potentially going to take away the right of that Christian school in Warwick to hire beautiful Christian teachers like that beautiful lady who's really encouraging your granddaughter to not worry about things?
Yeah, well, that's right. I just think that would be so devastating because I can see that the reason this little one is now doing so well is because she's had this teacher who's helped her. It was a big change going into prep, and she was genuinely very anxious. But that has made all the difference, and I think that that's been such a gift, and to not have that would be so sad.
Absolutely, yeah. And, I'd venture to say that the fact that school is so beautiful and the teachers so beautiful is because they have a beautiful faith and a belief in God, in a beautiful God who loves the world and cares about people and wants the individual to do well and wants children to be blessed. I mean, we've only got to look at Jesus when the children tried to come to him and the apostles got all corporate on him and said, let's get rid of these kids. They're just a nuisance. They're in the way. And what did Jesus do? We know what he did. He brought them. He laid hands on them. He blessed them. So that's really what a Christian school is, isn't it? It's allowing God to bless kids.
Yeah, and look, the whole ethos, certainly in this little school, is, from top to bottom, the grade 10ers come and visit the preppies to encourage them. And they'll pray with them. And I go, wow.
Absolutely. Alistair, you must have some great thoughts on this call too, Alistair.
Absolutely, and thanks for calling in, Natalie. It's so good to hear what's happening in all of our Christian schools, the love and concern that our Christian teachers, and not just Christian teachers, all of our Christian staff demonstrate. It's not just the teachers, it's the school nurse who not only provides medical assistance to the child, but also prays with the child through what they're going through. Mm-hmm. It's the school gardener who's mentoring and walking alongside the students and demonstrating about how care for God's creation is something that we all can be a part of. And it's the faith that permeates the entire school that's passed on to students so that they can not only see it, but they can experience it and be discipled as a result. So these are the stories that we've heard time and time again, at not just the town hall events, but also on the website that we've set up, which was done to facilitate the sharing of these positive stories.
Yeah, amazing. Natalie, we've had a few calls come in, so I do want to get to some other calls, but I want to thank you so much. And what an amazing story about your little granddaughter there, and we wish her all the best and hope and pray that school retains its Christian faith and its Christian staff moving forward, and that your little granddaughter just keeps flourishing there. But thank you so much for the call today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, we do have another caller on hold, and Arthur, I want to thank you for your patience. Have you got a comment or a question today?
A comment. I think it is what you were saying about the fact that no politician or representative of the government was there is pretty poor. But on a slightly different tact, I think people should be able to make choices. But my concern is that in opening us up, how does it affect, say, the Muslim community? Because obviously they will have the right to do that. But my concern is what they teach in the Muslim schools. Yeah. So anyhow, that's all I wanted to say.
Well, that's a good comment. And Arthur, I want you to hold there. Arthur's from Mount Druitt in Sydney, by the way. And thank you so much for calling, Arthur. We love getting Sydney callers now that we've got a digital signal across Sydney and Melbourne from Vision here. But Alistair, what are your thoughts on that? How will this affect the Muslim schools of Australia?
Well, in the same way that it will affect us, they also are asking for the right to employ people of Islamic faith. And that is their right, just like it is our school's rights to employ people of Christian faith. They should have the same rights that we have. Now, of course, we all need to teach in a way that complies with the curriculum and the expectations there, and all of our schools do that. But this is something that transcends just the Christian faith. This is something that applies to all faiths across Australia. And in some respects, we would say, well, if a political party is able to preference people of a particular political persuasion, why should we not also be able to preference people of a particular faith persuasion? Why should the rules be different for us than it is for them?
And I appreciate that, but my concern is that we've brought laws into being that allow not so godly kind of things to be promoted as part of an education thing. Like I'm all for I'm a Christian, so but I'm all for them coming in and doing SRE and things like that. But their whole ethos outside of that SRE, scripture in the schools, is slanted towards their belief, which is not always, is sometimes very ungodly, and that's my concern.
Yeah, you got a response for that, Alistair?
Oh, look, I mean, not really. I mean, I can understand what Arthur's saying. I mean, we would say as a Christian schooling group that we want to see everyone's rights protected, not just our rights, but other faith-based groups. But we are calling for certainly for our rights to employ people of faith to be protected.
Yeah, and you represent the Christian schools of Australia. Well, thank you so much, Arthur. As I said, we love getting Sydney callers in, and we wish you all the best for that State of Origin game on Wednesday night as well. But we are going to go to the National News Bulletin now. But if you want to call us, there is a talk line open now. You can call us on 1-800-316-316. That's 1-800-316-316. We're talking about the federal government's attempt to limit the rights of Christian schools to hire purely Christian teachers here on Vision. Well, Alistair, obviously people are concerned about this because our talk lines just keep lighting up, and I want us to go straight to a very patient caller, Karen, who actually waited that whole news break. Karen, thank you for your patience. And have you got a comment or a question for Alistair today?
Look, I'm just excited to be able to join you and promote Christian schools. As a single mum, I found myself at 32, and my husband, who left us just as we enrolled our children at a Christian school, our three sons. He took the first one with him, but let me just cut to the chase. Later, he tried to take the youngest child from me, even though the law courts had disallowed it. And he successfully took him to another town, and I had to go through Lawway to get him back. But this is what happened in Thomas's class. He was 6. The whole class prayed for him, and I just can't tell you how supported I felt as a single mum, having to go to court again then to, follow through with things and get my son back. But this is the wonderful thing. When the teacher told the class I asked him to, I said to her what happened. She said, "Have I got your permission?" Of course. And the class all wrote Thomas a letter, each child, and then they all prayed. And one little boy in his letter, a couple of kids said some amazing things. One kid said, the way of a man thinks right in his own eyes, but it just leads to death, so come home. Another little boy said, I'm looking after your desk until you come back. And another little boy said, Thomas, come back. We're praying for you, and that's the first time I've ever prayed out loud in front of people. So I really want you to come back. And, of course, he came back, and I won the case, and, it was all wonderful. But, without that prayerful support, where would this single mother have been?
Yeah, a single mother exercising her human right to have a faith in God, which I'm sure got you through those dark times, and just sending your kid to a Christian school where he's getting prayed for and getting loved. And Alistair, this must warm your heart.
Oh, absolutely. I love hearing these stories, just time and time again, about how teachers care, staff care, and students care. In fact, that was the other thing that we would hear quite often at the town hall events, was just students gathering around students, praying for them, supporting them. In fact, before one town hall event we had over in Perth, we all prayed together, and to hear the students over there praying, who were going to be leading worship and sharing their stories. I mean, their prayers were just so inspirational. They had such a deep faith in God and Jesus and what he had done for them, and they were so excited about sharing that. It's just such a blessing that comes out of the Christian school movement, and it's something to be protected.
Amen.
Yeah, so, and how does this make... Can I ask you, Karen, were you aware of that these laws had been proposed to change the rights?
Just now aware of it. I am so aware of it. I've taken letters. I've personally sent letters to my 2 state and federal MP, and one, I got his number off a fridge magnet I was given, local federal member, and when I went to email him, it bounced. It not just bounced, it sent me a message saying it was blocked. So I printed it out and the blocked printout letter, and I took it to his office, and he wasn't there. It was lunch hour, but a nice young man came out and took my letter from me. I said, I want an explanation why it was blocked. This is from a fridge magnet email address. What's going on? I want to be able to voice my concerns about this. And I've taken that letter to other people and other churches, and of course they're already on board with it, but I'm just pedantic. But let me just give you an update about my two boys. When they graduated from school, in the Christian school, they both became wonderful tradesmen. And then the eldest one said to his future boss, he was going to apprentice, as they're both Sparkies, and he said, "What can I do after this?" And he said, "Well, we've got a pathway for you for a promotion." And both of them today are in management in their jobs. So, the academic ability and my eldest son told me that it was highly, significant help to him that he was educated in a Christian school by his employer.
Yep.
So,
that's the outcome society wants. That's the outcome the federal government should want. Contributing members of society working, paying taxes, and enabling the government to do what they're supposed to do, which is to provide us with healthcare, education, and defence, and but not necessarily meddle in our private faith. But, Karen, I want to thank you so much for calling. We've had a lot of callers and there's still people waiting.
I'll let you go, darling.
God bless you. And you know what? Yeah, the school did a good job, Karen, but you obviously did a great job with your sons as well. So well done.
Yeah.
You must be proud.
Well, I am proud of them, but I also feel a bit of a failure too, like a lot of single mums. All single mums need encouraging.
Well, it sounds like you've done a super job to me, Karen. So you just take that to heart, okay? You've done a wonderful job, and thank you again for calling 2020 today.
Okay.
God bless. God bless.
Gave me a job too.
Yeah, awesome. God bless.
And
we're gonna move on because we've got so many people calling, and we've got another Karen in the house, and this Karen is from Adelaide. Karen, I want to thank you for your patience. Is Karen there? Maybe not. So we'll go to our next caller, who is Vince from Brisbane. Vince, let me just try and get you on there. Are you there, Vince? Have you got a comment or a question for our guest today?
Yeah, Andrew. Look, for Alistair, isn't it true that the Queensland government's trying to ram through a similar bill before the Queensland election in October? I mean, to me, both look to be typical examples of an old Marxist socialist doctrine of, big government sticking their noses into every aspect of our lives. Yeah. Good question, yeah.
Yeah, no, look, thanks very much. Look, that is absolutely true. There is a similar bill that has been released for public comment at this point, and it makes pretty much the same changes that's being recommended by the ALRC. It hasn't yet been introduced to Parliament, and we'll be fighting just as strongly against that one as we are against the Commonwealth one. The reality is this is happening all around the country. In all of the states and territories, they're all having a shift towards these restricting laws, and we're having to fight against them in every state and territory.
Yeah, I'm actually an LNP member, a very recent LNP member. I'm going to a meeting later tonight. I just want to, just be clear on that, details, with that the Queensland bill, and just right, bring that to a party's attention. Look, I'm sure they'll be voting against it, surely. I would hope. But what's worrying is if the Queensland government, they want to push it through, don't they, before the election? Is that the reason I think they want to put it through before the election is because right now they've got the majority, haven't they, and to do so. But after the election, the way it's looking for them, they won't. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's the concern we're facing, Vince. That there's only 3 sitting weeks left between now and the election, so it would be tight for them to push it through, but that's not to say that they couldn't do it. And so we're certainly advocating just as strongly with the LNP and the Labor government here in Queensland making the same representations, seeking to not have those changes.
Yeah. All right. Oh, good. Okay.
Well, as a non-member of either major party, Vince, I just want to say if you have joined one of those parties, just apply as much pressure as you can, because sometimes, as much as we'd like to think the LNP always vote in line with Christian values and beliefs. They don't always do that either. But right now, I think in Australia, the only non-Labor government, either state or federal, is in Tasmania. So we have a whole nation covered in Labor governments, and it does feel like, doesn't it, that a lot of these laws and proposed changes in lots of areas of society are being rammed through at the moment. So I guess there is a good news story, though, isn't there, Alistair, that the homeschooling was under threat recently as well, but a lot of pressure was applied by people in Queensland toward the Queensland State Government about homeschooling, and those proposed changes were dropped because that really was a threat, a potential threat to Christian parents homeschooling their kids. Have you got a comment about that as well, Alistair?
Oh, no, absolutely. That was a real concern, and the homeschooling movement came out very strongly against those changes and was able to prevent it moving on. So it does raise a concern as to what's next within Queensland. Where's the next tranche of legislation coming, and what do we need to respond to?
Awesome, Vince. Well, we want to thank you so much for calling in today. And out of interest, Vince, did you send kids to a Christian school or to a state school?
Kids, yeah. I haven't had children.
Oh, okay.
I was I did for a while in Bathurst, a Catholic school. Most of my time, though, in 75 to 80, I was in a high school at Macpherson in the Nambucca Valley. It was a very good. I mean, mind you, I think it was a very good school. But for me, it's just it's the principle of the thing. I'm been studying deeply the whole big government encroachment into every aspect of our lives. Well, big government and big corporation, crony capitalist element in it too. And to me, what they're doing with the Christian schools, it's just another example of something that I've got to push back on. And after years about writing about this stuff, I thought, look, I've got to join some party. I was with Australia Party for a while, but I wasn't going anywhere. And I thought, minor parties are never going to get in power. My thinking is to try and influence, one of the major parties.
Awesome, mate. Well, it's good because that's how we make a difference, isn't it? We get involved and we engage and we exert our influence. Because as you can see in the current Labor government, federally especially, there are some people in there with some real agendas, and they're ramming these agendas down our throats. And I think the average Australian doesn't agree with a lot of their stuff, but these people have got themselves into those positions by commitment and longevity. They've been there a long time and they've committed themselves to their cause.
We've been asleep at the wheel for so long. For someone who's studied National Socialism and communism all his life, I've got to say I look back and say I was so asleep. My mate Gary, I think for years before me, he was awake, just the whole as a global thing to what was going on. And it wasn't until really after COVID and the American summer riots and a 3-minute video I saw that I thought, oh my goodness, there's something horribly amiss here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, good on you, Vince. You just keep fighting that good fight, and you've made a positive step there. You've decided to do something, and doing something is a whole lot better than doing nothing. And we just hope and pray that God uses you in that space. But I want to thank you so much for calling 2020 today.
You're welcome, Andrew. Yeah. Thank you.
And just want to put it out there to other callers as well. You can still call us on 1-800-316-316. There is a couple of talk lines open now, and we'd like to get your thoughts. Are you a Christian parent? Did you send your kids to a Christian school? Are you thinking about sending your kids to a Christian school? And does this attempt by the Albanese government to really stifle Christian education in Australia and religious education more broadly, because it won't only be Christian schools that are affected by this? How does this make you feel? We'd love to hear your thoughts. There's still a few minutes for you to call in. But Alistair, I'd just like to ask you also, what really is your focus right now? The organisation that you work for and that you represent, which is the Associated Christian Schools. What's your big focus right now, and what is your dream outcome? What are you hoping to achieve here?
Yeah, look, I mean, our focus, obviously, from an advocacy perspective, is the ALRC report and stopping these changes going through. What we would love to see, though, is actually a positive right for faith-based organisations to be actually able to live and practice in a way that's consistent with our beliefs. We've been forced to rely upon exemptions. We have to come within a particular exemption, and exemptions lead to litigation, and that's not good for our schools. We don't want to be spending money litigating, defending ourselves. One of the things we want to see is actually a positive right to say, yes, you are entitled to be what you are, to believe what you believe, and to practice consistently with that. And in fact, one of the report authors of the ALRC inquiry, Justice Rothman, he's actually been quoted in media as coming out subsequently to releasing the report, saying that yes, religious bodies are entitled to that positive right, and they should have a positive right rather than having to necessarily defend upon.
I like that. I like that terminology, a positive right, which is, again, what we touched on earlier. It's just a basic human right, isn't it? And the irony in this whole situation is, if you look at the world, the whole world population, it's about 7.5 billion. You've got about over 2 billion people claiming to be Christian, over 1 billion claiming to be Muslim, I think around about 1 billion claiming to be Hindu. So 4/7 of the world's population right now claim a faith. And we have this government trying to tell you, as a religious institution, we're going to take over your style of education and we're going to try and remove an element of the faith that you hold, as if faith's something strange or weird or foreign. It's actually the majority of the world right now have a faith. But Alistair, we have 2 callers waiting. I want to try and get through them before we finish our show today. And the first one is Janet, and Janet is calling us from Perth in WA. Janet, have you got a comment or a question today for Alistair?
I just wanted to comment on Christian schooling. I'm a grandmother now, but when our children were young, primary aged, our oldest, we didn't know. They were going to a public school at the time, and we didn't know that he was a rather quiet boy and he was learning the violin, which made him different from everyone else in his school. And we didn't know that he was being bullied. And then we decided to send our children to a Christian school, and it really helped our son. He was given the recognition as an individual. He was helped with his faith, and it prepared him for life ahead. It really helped him to. I remember calling for him once to take him to a dental appointment, and the atmosphere of the classroom was completely different. The teacher wasn't there. The children had been all given work to do silently, and as we left the classroom, there were cries all over the room with his name, goodbye, see you later, addressing him. And I could see how good that was for him. He had friends here. He wasn't being bullied. And he felt the love of Christ in this atmosphere. And that really prepared him for the manhood that he was facing ahead. Today, he's an airline pilot. So he's really come out of himself through the Christian school.
Yeah, amazing. Just another positive story. Have a quick comment there, Alistair, because we've got one more caller we want to get through before the half hour. But what's your thoughts on this, Alistair?
Oh, look, absolutely. It's another way in which Christian schools actually provide a safe environment. We seem to be criticised for not providing a safe environment, but it couldn't be any further from the truth. We actually provide a safe environment for all students, and again, that anti-bullying message is another common message coming through our town halls, where students come to our schools and they find themselves actually supported from the previous state school they might have been in, where they were being bullied, and now they're being loved and accepted for who they are.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I want to thank you so much, Janet, for calling. We do have one more call we want to rush through, but we just appreciate your story. It's such an amazing story, and it's just another example of what Christian education can do. But thank you for your call, Janet.
Thank you. Thank you for your program. God bless.
God bless you too. And we got a caller from Victoria. We love Victorian callers. Kerry, are you still with us?
I am, yes.
Comment or question for Alistair today?
Probably a comment in that I'm currently teaching in a Lutheran Christian school in Victoria, and our daughter goes to the same school. So, you know, I know how wonderful Christian schools are, and I just think that we have to do as much as we can to keep them, because, as we know, mainstream education, the curriculum is written merely for, well, you know what it's about. It's not what our children. Most people don't want their children having to read and learn about things that really, especially in primary school, they don't need to see anything that's really not godly, because otherwise it's just skewing their view of life. So, I just think it's a travesty if this happens, and certainly we need to know what we can do to stand up for our faith schools and make sure that they stay with us long term, not just, you know, I'm sure we've had opposition before, and I'm sure we'll have opposition again, but we need to stand up now, or we are going to be in big trouble, I think, in the future.
Absolutely, Kerry, and I'm so glad you asked that question, because, Alistair, we're about to round up. So what can our listeners, including Kerry and myself, do to help you in this pushback? Alistair, talk us through it.
Yeah, sure. So, look, the first thing you can do is make your views known to politicians. And so I've heard it said that if politicians are receiving 10 or 20 letters from constituents, that's when they start to know that they've got an issue here. So if constituents are writing into their local members, both at the state and federal level, and letting their concerns be known and saying this is a matter that's of importance to us, that's the first step, because that will make them realise that this is important.
So write to your federal member.
Write your own message. The federal member is key with the Commonwealth changes. And try the message in your own words. We don't really want to be sending in template responses. We want them to hear those. And then finally, go in and meet with them. Make an appointment and let your concerns be known, and do it in a reasonable way.
Awesome.
You can get more on our website, mychristianschool.au, as well, and we provide all the links you need to advocate.
So I'm going to repeat that. That's mychristianschool.au.
That's right. No .com, just .au.
mychristianschool.au. Write to your federal member. Go and visit your federal member. Let your voice be heard, and go to mychristianschool.au. Alistair Macpherson, what a joy it's been to have you on our show today. He's the Executive Director of Public Policy and Advocacy with the Associated Christian Schools. This is a very important topic to every Christian, whether we have kids or not, in schools or not. And Alistair, I want to thank you so much for joining us on 2020 Today.
Thank you very much. It's great to be with you, Andrew.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.